hard to be mad at John Lithgow when he leaks news.
Oh, Dumbledore.
Yeah, you can't, because I reckon they'd call him up and be like, John, that wasn't announced yet. He'd go, oh, I'm so very sorry. I'm so excited to play the role, and I was asked by a lovely young man.
Yeah, he looked like he was just like a professor in a library being asked about it. Well, of course, I'm very excited.
I can imagine Warner Brothers being like, it's okay, but just don't do it again.
I mean, it was already kind of out. That's why you got asked the question. This is the news, of course, that John Lithgow has now been confirmed to be playing Dumbledore.
Which we unpacked properly on Double Take.
Yes, in the Harry Potter series. Yes, please go check that out on Patreon. No, of course
when we saw him in the flesh at Sundance, he just seemed like a lovely, bumbling, giant teddy bear of a man.
Here's our scoop on John Lithgow from our time at Sundance, from not interviewing him. He didn't turn up for our thing. He was busy, I'm sure. But he's tall. Tall man. I would say 6'5".
I don't know why. It's like when I saw him as Churchill, who was a small man.
Yeah.
Obviously, in my head, I thought, well, you are Winston Churchill, therefore you're small. But actually,
it's not.
That's what would have confused it for me.
My experience. Our experience has been with talent is that
everyone's shorter than
us.
But in our heads, you always picture talent being taller than
because of they're in a big cinema screen, and also
the camera
we forget that we are taller than people.
Our perspective is of a normal heighted person filming.
But we forget that we're tall.
Yes.
So we forget we're tall, and we always think they're going to be taller. But when John Lithgow is actually that height, we're like, whoa.
Hey, and you realise there's a reason Elijah Wood was cast as a Hobbit, because he's a lovely, tiny little man.
He really was. Pocket size. What a random cameo he had in The Monkey.
Yes, he was there.
Kind of really inconsequential.
Just that one scene.
Basically, yeah.
Having fun.
And it was that just
one scene.
I actually just want to say that if you follow us on social media, we put out these videos last week with Sophia Smith-Gaylor, who's this journalist and language expert who was quite game for playing the language game with us out in Primrose Hill, and then she explained why some countries translate film titles so strangely, right? And the example she gave was The Sound of Music, which in Spain was released as Smiles and Tears, Son Risas Son Lágrimas, and then in Latin America was released as Novicia Rebelde, The Rebel Nun, both in Spanish, different reasons, cultural reasons why they're released differently. And go check that out if you haven't seen it. But the official Sound of Music Instagram page commented on it, and I was like, hang on a second. I mean, they were like, oh, this is so interesting.
There's a Sound of Music Instagram page?
It's got like 250,000 followers, and it's active. And imagine the brief for this. Who owns it? I think it's a Warner Brothers movie.
Yeah,
I want to
Warner
say.
Brothers.
But here's the pitch. It's like, hey, do you want to be the social media executive managing the Sound of Music page? Okay. How many films are there? One film. Okay. Is it a franchise? No, it's a one-film franchise. When did it come out? 65 years ago.
And are they posting best bits, clips, tidbits,
things? I'm sure bits about the real Von Trapp family, the stage musical. But it's active. I mean, active enough for them to be commenting on a random piece of content that we put out.
I think we
hashtagged. I think I hashtagged Sound of Music.
So that would have done it.
But and Sophia was like, "Oh, it's the Naughty Nun in person."
Could you imagine being in a drinks and it's like, "Oh, what do you do?" "Oh, I manage your social media account for The Sound of Music."
Yeah.
"Oh, is there a new one?" "No, the original."
Yeah, the original.
Yeah, we post like every 3 days.
Okay, cool. Oh, right. So
quite a lot actually.
You got new interviews with Christopher Plummer. He's dead. No. Oh, okay. And the other a lot of the cast are dead. Okay.
Yeah.
Julie Andrews retired.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just it's fun. It's honest work.
Okay. Cool.
Got the 70th anniversary in a few years. That's going to be big. Really leading into that.
Anyway, I just found that really funny. It's like someone's job. Welcome to episode 170. We've now entered a new decade of numbers for the episode. 170.
Eerily close to episode 200, George.
Welcome to episode 170. Last week we reviewed The Monkey, Grand Theft Hamlet. Technically correct.
Kind of, yeah.
If you haven't checked that out, please go do. We did Double Take this week, as we talked about John Lithgow being confirmed as Dumbledore for the Harry Potter TV series.
Euphoria Season 3 is filming, and so is Dune Messiah in the summer, which is interesting for us. Kathleen Kennedy is sunsetting her career at Lucasfilm as she retires. What does that mean for the future of Star Wars and all of it?
Yeah.
Go and check that out if you haven't already. It's a great time, Double Take.
But you have come back for more film reviews, which we have. We have finally have a review of I'm Still Here, which is the Brazilian Oscar-nominated Best Picture contender. We also have
The Last
Showgirl, Pamela Anderson in a Gia Coppola movie. We are recording this a little bit ahead of time. This is recording this before the Oscars, so if you were expecting any sort of post-Oscars chat, we don't have it because we can't look into the future.
The week afterwards.
Yeah. Hope if something crazy happens. I mean, who knows anymore? I told you about how I
That's crazy.
I don't usually watch the Oscars, and then the one year that I was going to be in Florida to watch it live, I had COVID, so I couldn't go. And then they watched it live, and Will Smith slapped Chris Rock.
The
And I was
one
like,
year.
The 1 year I would have. And Anna watched it like happening on TV, and she was like, "That's not a joke. That looked weird." So we got movies, we got emails, and we got some games. Stay tuned.
The film that we haven't yet seen, that is an omission in our Oscar-nominated films, which everyone is like, I'm still here. And we just, I don't know what to tell you, the UK, we don't have it yet. You've finally seen it.
I have. I had the chance this week to go and see it. And for those who don't know, I'm Still Here is this Brazilian film which has got a huge amount of hype and praise behind it. It has 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is an 8.7 on IMDb, which sits it already in the top 250 of IMDb's top 250. There is a recency bias with that. I'm sure that will come down, but that's still pretty mega for a film to do that.
We should revisit the top 250.
We should
an
do,
ever-changing list where
Just-
it's like it's still Shawshank and Godfather
Yeah.
at the top. But yeah, we should go back to it because there are always some interesting ones that like sit in the top 20 where we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
But anyway.
because then some like new editions, like
Yeah,
I'm Still
the
Here, for
recency
example, come
bias,
in.
I
You go,
think,
it's
yeah.
like June Part 2 will be quite high for some reason.
Yeah. It's good to see like after the dust settles on a film, what like the Tree of Life for a good 10 years
Yeah,
was
yeah.
right at the top,
Yeah, I wonder if that's
and
still
then
in
now that's I doubt. Do you think that's in the top
Well,
50?
also,
We should do it for a bonus maybe.
If a film like I'm Still Here is coming in with the recency bias,
Yes.
what's it pushing out?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it'd be good to
what's
see, like,
the 250th film that's getting pushed out.
If they had like a chart which dated the in ins and outs of like the top 20, top 50. Anyway, just a thought. Sorry.
Anyway, back on I'm Still Here. So yeah, it's this Brazilian film which is getting a lot of love and attention, directed by Walter Salles and starring Francesca Torres, who's also nominated for Best Actress and won Best Actress at the Golden Globes, I think, as well as Demi Moore. Based on a true story, I'm Still Here is about the Pavia family, an affluent middle-class family in 1970s Rio de Janeiro. They are a family of 5 children, 4 daughters and a boy, and their mother Eunice and the father Rubens. And they also have a housemaid who comes in who's really helpful as well and is a big part of this sort of bubble they have. And this house is full of life, full of laughter, full of parties, full of activity and smiles. And it's close to the beach. They often come to the beach and come back. And the whole film opens on Rio Beach in the sunshine. It is a wonderfully warm, happy family environment. However, in the 1970s, Brazil was under a military dictatorship, which is shamefully a period of history I knew nothing about. And the opening shot of the film is Eunice swimming in the water and on a beautiful summer's day with her family, but this military helicopter flies overhead. Shot beautifully, by the way, the whole film. This family idyll is then shattered when the father, Rubens, is taken from their home. Some men arrive in the middle of the night. Could be policemen, there could be army, but they're definitely sinister. In not wanting to cause a fuss, Rubens agrees to go with them. He puts on a suit, and because he used to be a politician, he feels like he's being sort of singled out. And they say, we just need you to come and give evidence of something. He kisses his wife and says, I'll be back in time for dessert, and then he disappears. And what begins as hours becomes days, then becomes weeks. And what has been this home, this happiness, this paradise full of noise is suddenly turned into a house full of silence. It's like a shadow of silence falls on this home, and you really notice it. It's a real contrast between the two phases of the film. This heavy disturbance and this sort of slow realization dawning on the family of what's happening to their father. The core of the film is Eunice, played by Francesca Torres, and she is then having to deal with not only trying to find out what's happening to her husband, but also trying to keep her family together. As a whole, the film is a study of her determination, her patience, her resilience, and her dignity, really, in the face of this dawning tragedy and upending of her entire life. You then have a kind of more subtle subplot with the children, which is about them coming of age individually, bit by bit, as they all interpret the sort of information and news that's been given to them from their mother, about their father. You know, there's some really nice moment. There's a moment of conversation between two of the siblings, but towards the end of the film, where they talk about their loss of innocence. They sort of compare notes about when did you lose yours and when did you lose mine. And then there's also another moment where one of the siblings sort of watches her mother see something, and by watching her mother realizes something, and it's really, really skillfully done there. I would say it's a really good drama. I'm Still Here, very sensitively told, and it's got some really like tender moving moments. I would say that with all the hype and how skillful the rest of the film is, I was expecting it to really devastate me, to really emotionally tear me apart. It didn't. It was interesting, but I would say it left me slightly unmoved in places. But I don't think that's necessarily a problem because, it simmers, but it never boils. And I came out thinking, that's a shame. But when I've been speaking to a couple of other people about it, including a Brazilian friend of mine, and they said that's kind of the point of the film. Eunice as a character, she exists without closure. She exists in the absence of meaning, with nothing to hold on to. That she is constantly in a state of tension, in not knowing what happened to her husband and trying to hold her family together. And that's kind of how it holds the audience as well. And in the way the film, in the way that the film builds towards its conclusion, it's not the kind of story that will give you a big cathartic moment, because that's not the nature of what's happened to the Pavia family. It's very different to that. So in that respect, I've thought about it longer, and I'm like, I understand why emotionally I've been stepped back. But I would have loved just a moment or two just to really feel for this. I will say there's a beautiful shot sort of in the second half of the film where a decision is made with the family about what to do, and this moment is captured by one of the children on a Super 8 camera from the back of a car, and it's just a really great moment, and that did really land emotionally. And I was like, I really understand everything that all those characters are going through, and that's been captured so well in that sort of moment. So beautifully shot, and Fernanda Torres as Eunice, as the mother, who spends a bit of time at the beginning of the film being taken into questioning herself to ask about her husband, and you get this sort of subjective experience from her point of view of what's happening in Brazil. It doesn't explain it to an audience. It's trying to, from her point of view, she is just as confused as we might be as a English audience, not knowing as much what's happening with the dictatorship. She's fantastic in it and deserves all the plaudits she gets. The home as well of the family, you really become quite attuned to it and understand, like, all the spaces, all the different rooms, the dynamics, the creaks of the floorboards, the comings and goings, the rhythms of this home. So when it's disturbed, you really feel it. And I felt with that as well, 1970s Rio is made to feel and look really cool and present. It feels really tactile, like an era. Just great, the cars, the fashion, the costumes. It's fantastic. So that's what I'd say. It's solid. It's good. And although it didn't emotionally knock me out like I was expecting, I do think that with the performances, with the direction, with the cinematography, there's enough in there to really enjoy. If we were to put it now, talking in my ranking of the Oscar movies,
I was gonna ask.
In the low, but as we said last week, it's a good year. So I'm probably kicking this around the substance area.
Which is always a silly thing to be comparing it.
I know.
Well, how is it better than the substance? They're completely different things.
Yeah.
But I see your point.
I think I got more
it's not
out of
shining as in your top half of films there.
Again,
go check out when we ranked the Oscars films from a few weeks ago. It's a great episode.
Yeah. But so I know some people really felt passionately about it, but I that's what I would say.
Yeah.
It's good, it's solid, didn't emotionally devastate me, but that's kind of the point maybe. And I learned a lot about that period of history.
It'd be safe to say other films from the last year sit much more favourably, that weren't nominated, sit a lot more favourably than this film. There's other films that's what we said in that episode.
It's also a very bizarre thing where it's got loads of plaudits, but even here in the UK where it's been released, it's got a very limited release. Really have to try and squirrel and find it.
For an Oscar-nominated film as well.
Yeah.
It's a bit,
you're right. And to answer your point, there are films like Sing Sing, The Apprentice, Challenges that I rate more highly.
Yeah.
But it's perfectly respectable film.
If you want to send us your thoughts of I'm Still Here, you can, of course, send your emails, your reviews, your questions, your concerns into hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com, just like Josh did. Josh writes in with the review of I'm Still Here and says, Dear James and George, I got to catch an early screening of I'm Still Here yesterday and it completely blew my socks off. It was the final Best Picture nominee that I hadn't seen, so I was really looking forward to the screening, and now it'd probably be my second favourite to take home the award, slightly behind Nickel Boys. I loved how immediately the exposition sucks you into the gorgeous atmosphere of Rio de Janeiro in the 70s 70s, and I thought it was particularly amazing how much every shot and every set seemed completely lived in. The film handled its tone so exceptionally and knows exactly when to turn on the gripping drama. Fernanda Torres is extraordinary. I can't believe I haven't heard talk about her before this film because she has so much screen presence and gives every emotion her character is experiencing an extra dimension. I can't wait to see it again. Thank you as always for the amazing content. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts or on many exciting upcoming releases. Many thanks, Josh from Bristol. Josh, thank you so much.
Another email about I'm Still Here is from Vivian, who writes in and says, hello, James and George, George and James. Greetings. I'm usually 1 to 2 weeks late to the movies that you reviewed, so when I found out that you had not yet watched I'm Still Here, I was rubbing my hands together and thinking, my time to shine. I went into this movie blindly, and while I knew it was not going to be a light subject. I was not expecting it to be about political oppression. This is not something I usually watch unless I'm mentally prepared for it because of the political suppressions in my home country. I'm Still Here zoomed in on periods of the family experience, especially that Fernanda Torres' character during this time. And this angle made it quite easy for audiences to relate to the characters, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the stress and loss and hopelessness and grief, etc., that you would go through as a human being, no matter what the conflict was and what happened. My heart was getting heavier and heavier throughout the movie, but the moment when Vivian then refers to the moment I talked about when they compare sort of the loss of innocence was absolutely gut-punching. I could not help weeping in the cinema, but I had to suppress my voice since I was not alone. Unlike many reviewers on Letterboxd, I didn't mind the way the film sort of concludes towards the end, as this was based on a true story and the movie should provide a closure. The slice of life in each point, grasping my emotions tightly as if I was a family friend and witnessing their journey. That the movie did not follow the traditional Hollywood movie structure that potentially threw people off. That's what potentially threw people off, I assume. Anyway, this has become a long email. Thank you guys for the good work. You're becoming my go-to podcast during car rides, dishwashing, laundry folding, and running. I thoroughly enjoyed your content at Sundance. Wish you many more years of continued success. Best, Vivian. Yeah, I'm not saying it didn't move me, but I'm really glad you had an emotional reaction to it. And I that's why I immediately spoke to my Brazilian friend, because I was like, it's one thing for me as an English man, disconnected from this period of history. I'm absolutely aware that also if you have any part of your life that resonates with this, whether you are Brazilian or to do with political oppression, it's gonna ring true.
Yanis also writes in and says, Yanis, who just loves to fill his email with emojis, just in case we weren't sure, says, hello, James, with my most closely assembling emoji face, and hello, George, with yours. How are there no emoji with people with glasses? That is an omission to not have emojis.
There's the yellow face with the glasses on, like the comical one, isn't there?
Right, yeah. But that, glasses, they're not always, nerdy, comical people.
No, they're serious people like me.
I think this is the first film, Yanis goes on to say, I think this is the first film I've seen in a film before there's been a PK episode on it. So I'm taking your advice from a few episodes ago and writing in now. I love going into the cinema completely blind. That's when I generally get the best experiences out of it. And I just came out of a screening of I'm Still Here, feeling such a mixture of emotions, cry face. The historical context and importance, as well as the blend between artistic filmmaking and documentary aesthetics, all highlighter emoji, how beautifully crafted this film is. Especially the performances. They were all so well portrayed with a sense of realism that really connects you to their lives. Going into this, I wasn't aware that these characters were portrayals of real people, and even without this prior context, I still felt Eunice's, the mother's, internal struggles, constrained by the dictatorship and the ever-present dangers surrounding her, particularly the passage of time, clock emoji. It really added a layer of emotional depth that I wasn't expecting. I've come out of the cinema feeling like I've experienced her family growing old, and then emojis for everyone of the family. Personally, I'm not too fussed on awards wins, but I do find nominations important for recognizing a film's efforts and talents in a category. Knowing that I'm Still Here got nominated for Best Picture in the Oscars is such a great achievement, and it totally deserves it. It's not American mainstream. It's pretty much all in Portuguese, and there's no big Hollywood actors. Fire emoji, fire emoji. If you're looking for a film centered around family, is nominated for Best Picture, is mainly not spoken in English, has a time skip, has a lead studying law, has a wife grieving and partner's death, and as one of the lead actresses put a bag over their head just to be asked questions, I've got a suggestion for you, thinking face.
Yes.
Let's just say 13 is an unlucky number.
It's not Emilia Perez. That's what he's trying to say. That there is an overlap there in dealing with some of the subject matter, particularly with like this idea of people disappearing, and it just deals with it so sensitively. So, I really appreciate the emails on that, and I look forward to hearing more people's thoughts.
Yeah, please do send more emails in about just more about the Oscar contenders if you've still got them and you're just catching up with them now. As always, you can send those in to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. Moving on to the other film of this week, The Last Showgirl, which is directed by Gia Coppola of the Francis Ford clan. I've not seen another Gia Coppola film, but
No.
she's done Palo Alto, Mainstream, The Seven Faces of Jane, Good Boy.
I think this is probably the film of hers that's been given the biggest push. I remember
Sure.
Palo Alto getting a fair bit. James Franco was in it. Val Kilmer had a good soundtrack. But yeah, I think this is
This film has come out this year, and it stars almost like the return of Pamela Anderson in a lead role. We've also got Jamie Lee Curtis in a supporting role. This is set
quite a good cast actually.
really
Really
good.
Dave Bautista in a big wig.
Yeah, and we talked about this on Double Take about like wrestlers doing acting after they're done. It's like Dave Bautista doing this, though he's not a huge part in this, he still is like a supporting role. I'm like, you've totally nailed the type of work you should be doing. He's very good in it. But I'm like, he's got this like massive frame and like he could beat up everyone in the room, but he's also like soft and emotionally empathetic. To contrast that, it's quite
I do
nice.
think it's plausible that you could say to me, this is I could never, if I'd never didn't know anything about him, I wouldn't think this guy used to be a wrestler.
Yes.
Whereas even with someone like, even though I think John Cena is quite good actually and has good comedic chops, when you look at him, you're like, he looks like a wrestler. He's big.
And nice that he's done his hyper successful studio stuff. And I'm not like, it's Drax. Like,
No.
I have none of that in my mind.
No.
That helps with the paint. But I'm like, it's just, no, it's Dave Bautista. He's doing his thing. He's doing his sort of other side. Anyway, The Last Showgirl is set in Las Vegas. Pamela Anderson is a dancer in a very specific type of showgirl dancer, and it is this dying breed of Rockette-style dancing. And Dave Bautista plays Eddie, who runs this troupe of dancing, and he lets a lot of the girls know, who are all of mixed ages, some of whom have been doing it, like Pamela Anderson's character, for 20, 30 years. Other than much younger girls who are new to it, and he lets them know that, unfortunately, we're losing the show. We're no longer going to get it. Cirque du Soleil is coming in. And that, for Pamela Anderson's character, is like her entire world crashing down. Her name is Shelley. Sorry, her entire world crashing down. It's all that she's known. She's seeing this like piece of her very own history being tossed aside. She speaks a lot with Jamie Lee Curtis, who's also an older dancer who's now left the show. She works at the local casino fixing drinks, and she also has a bit of a gambling issue herself. In walks her estranged daughter, who catches up with her and realizes she's still doing mostly the same thing. It's shot on gorgeous 16mm film with anamorphic. We've talked about this before, but it's like one of the softest looking films, and I don't mean that in terms of like it's out of focus. It's grainy and hazy. There's a lot of vignetting, a lot of shallow depth of field. Vegas, often shot on rooftops with all the stars twinkling in the atmosphere. Everything feels like it's both gritty and realistic, but also like ethereal and dreamlike. And yeah, that's sort of where all you need to know about The Last Showgirl. George, how did you get on with The Last Showgirl?
I didn't think much of this at all, actually. I thought this was really quite poor, really quite disappointing, which gives me no pleasure to say because I was really excited to see it, and I thought I love the look of this film. And
beautiful to look at.
I've actually never seen Pamela Anderson in anything, so this is my first time seeing her. So this kind of idea that the return of Pamela Anderson, it's kind of. I think in a good way, kind of lost to me. I'm not weighed down by that kind of hype or baggage. I'm aware that the cultural perception of her is different to this kind of role that she would normally do. Right. So great to see an actor doing that. I will start with the good stuff. I think that it looks fantastic, as you just said, and the design of it, and it really captures this world of Vegas that is glitzy but also sleazy, at the same time, and this discomfort. And in fact, that's all to do with the story, which is being a showgirl. A lot of people judge her for it and say, it's, her daughter at one point says, it's a nudie show. You're just and Shelley says, no, it's so much more than that. It's my life. It really captures that very well. And, the cast, not just Dave Bautista and Jamie Lee Curtis, but, Kiernan Shipka, Brenda Song. And I will say with Jamie Lee Curtis, I love this point of the career she's at now, where every scene she's in there, she just nails it. She just absolutely turns up and gets it completely right. And I almost could have had a whole film about her character as well. And she's sort of this completely sort of Trump-esque orange spray tanned with the white
lips,
marks around there. And really captures that, again, that sort of strangeness of Vegas, this barren desert with all these massive neon artifacts. The thing that I think I would struggle, it's just the script. I think the script is really, really poor. And with Pamela Anderson, I think this really lets her down because I think she does give a very committed performance, but I'm stopping short of being like, that's a great performance, because I think the script hampers her so much that I think at times she comes across as wooden, and you can hear the different decisions and directions that she is doing, probably because the script is written in such an inconsistent way that she's having to change face so many times, and I found that quite jarring. The thing is that really bothered me with the script and the film in general is it's so repetitive and really doesn't advance this premise any further. And in the second half of the film, I just realised that every scene was telling me the exact same thing, which is repeating the premise of the film to me. It was just stating to me, yeah, show's closing, it's sad, but we love it, but also what does this mean? And the film ends. It just ends, and I thought, you've not developed that at all. I feel completely barren emotionally. You've not given me anything. There's a point in the film where Jamie Lee Curtis, in sort of like a montage, gets up on a table and starts dancing. And that was the point where I went, okay, I'm done. I'm done here. Because this film is just interested in poetic, provocative visuals. Oh, a great trailer. Yes, a great trailer you can make from all of this.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, Gia, this really didn't give me much substance. And speaking of substance, if you want to see a movie about a middle-aged woman being aged out of
With
show
that
business,
irony about the woman playing it having a sort of connection to it, yeah, you go and see this.
go see The Substance instead, which is much more fantastical, but I think has a lot more to say. I really did think it was poor.
I agree. I had a moment sort of half an hour, 40 minutes in where the script... do you know what it was? Like, I agree with you, it's not great. It also felt bitty to me.
Yeah.
Like we had scenes and a lot of the... I really wanted more cement in between the bricks for the scenes here. And what we got was scenes bookended by... sunset, sunrise shots of our characters where the sun's shining directly in and giving a gorgeous lens flare. Don't get me wrong, it looks beautiful, but it was that, I think, at the lack of a proper idea of what to do by connecting it. And you're right, there is a repetitiveness to it. With Pamela Anderson, it's like, I think it's been marketed as like her grand return, and I agree. I don't necessarily think that's true here. Watching Pam and Tommy a few years ago gave me this newfound appreciation for Pamela Anderson, which I think helps me appreciate what she's doing here. The fact that she was like, 'cause I don't think about, she's not my Roman Empire. I wasn't thinking about Pamela Anderson every day, but watching that show, it was like, oh my God, this is such an interesting way to see how her career was portrayed in the media. Her as this like iconic blonde bombshell sex symbol. The idea that this film touches on, but I agree, is underexplored, of like, you are the most important thing. The industry pumps up these women when they're young and relevant and interesting, and as they get older, they are essentially discarded and written out of history. And in Pam and Tommy, a really big thing is that Pamela Anderson wants to do proper acting. She wants to be taken seriously. She wants to have a role that really means something. It is a shame that this film isn't quite that. There are moments which I think are quite developed. I think Eddie, the guy, Dave Bautista, who plays Eddie, is like, I think Dave Bautista is great in this role, but it's also a little bit underbaked. So there's nuggets that are interesting there, and this idea of like, you sacrifice something for your entire career at the expense of your family relationships, and like her daughter coming to see her, who's really visually contrasted to Pamela Anderson. Like, she's in very like normal, grounded clothing, very undone up, and Pamela Anderson is like all done up to the nines. Parts of her performance where she's got this like unwavering enthusiasm and this smile that also has 1,000 tears in it. I'm like, yeah, we're almost there. Yeah. But it's very bitty. Do you know what? And it feels that the longer it goes on. It's just like a 94-minute film or something.
Yeah,
it's
that's
barely
it.
over 90 minutes. But ironically, we've had this a couple of times recently where like I feel the length in these 90-minute films a lot more than I do
in the Brutalist,
the 2-hour plus ones.
I think it's like, I genuinely think there's enough dramatic material with what they present us with to make a music video. Like it could make a great music video. But if you want to make a 90-minute movie, even a 90-minute movie is not long, you need to flesh it out more. But coming out of it, I really just think I know as much as the trailer told me. I was just
going to say, like, the trailer's brilliant, and I think that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Because like the opening's really great. It's the back staircase and the dressing room. Yeah. It's all gorgeously like with promise, and it's soft, it's anamorphic, and I'm loving the grainy but dreamlike quality. And I'm starting to get into it, and I just like the effects slightly wore off. And I agree, the Jamie Lee Curtis scene was like just clutching at straws for ideas. You know what I mean? Like, we shot in the back lot near the gates of Vegas, and it was just a character having a moment in front of the sun.
Yeah,
and it's like in front of the setting sun. I was like, you've done that 3 times now.
Yeah, and then it'd be like, we don't know what to put here, so let's get a shot of Pamela Anderson underneath like the flickering lights of a movie theater, just sort of up against the wall, looking askance. And it's really. I thought it was poor. I did think it's
gorgeous to look at.
Gorgeous to look at, but that's what I mean. Like, make it a music video. You don't need to make it a movie. I would happily, I look forward to seeing Pamela Anderson be able to flex her acting muscles in other things, and may we continue to see Dave Bautista Bautista and Jamie Lee Curtis and things.
I
But
really do recommend Pam Autonomy. Obviously not. It's not Pamela
what's really
Anderson
interesting is
playing
that I
herself.
think
it's a really good show.
I think she hated it. I don't think she was
Really?
consulted
Well, that's
about that
interesting.
show. Yeah, I think in a way that's kind of driven her.
I wouldn't be surprised. 'Cause it's a really like personal. I don't know. It's like a
Very
her
personal story.
She'll just be like, "Well, I didn't say that, and I didn't behave that way."
Yeah.
Versus like from my perspective, I'm like, "Oh my god, what an amazing story that's been told about a moment in time."
But that's the thing. I mean, I didn't, I've not watched Baywatch. I've not watched any of her career. I don't know anything about it. Didn't watch Pam and Tommy. I don't know anything. She's just a relic from the past. Not relic. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. But like, she's
a part of your generation.
not part of my generation, exactly.
Or like national identity as much as Baywatch in the US would have been like this. Sure, I have memories of watching Baywatch in America in hotel rooms.
Really?
Yeah, as like a young kid, it would be on. Seeing Hasselhoff and all of that just doing their thing.
Jess has written in about The Last Showgirl, though. She writes in and says, "Hi, gents. Just caught a screening of The Last Showgirl directed by Gia Coppola. I loved this movie. It is always interesting when main characters are so obviously flawed yet so lovable. It was such a beautiful movie to watch. It was as if the camera lens has a faint coating of glitter on it the whole time. I'm not sure if this movie is a love letter to older women or a cautionary tale. I think everyone would get something different out of it, and I wish I could have talked to the older women in my screening about their feelings about it. Unfortunately, they left too quickly for me to have a chat. It is selfish to pursue what makes you feel beautiful. Is it selfish to pursue what makes you feel beautiful at all costs, or is that a category only ascribed to women? Why is it so sad to see a woman age? Or is it perhaps only sad when they refuse to acknowledge it? Why do these questions say about me and my own ageism against older women? I love that the two women at the helm of this movie, Pamela Anderson and Jamie Lee Curtis, are two actors who in real life are acknowledging their age. And in this movie, Pamela often doesn't wear makeup and Jamie Lee shows her thighs, her stomach, her wrinkles. I love them for that. It reminded me of Good Luck to You, Leo Grand, although without the quietness that Emma Thompson ponders and loves her body. If Leo Grand is a beautiful balm, this movie is a guttural yell. Have you seen this film? I wonder if older women in your life have seen it. Any older listeners, what do you think? Thank you, as always, for your thoughtful reviews. You're both terrific. Jess, P.S. My city's cinema still hasn't screened Emilia Perez or The Brutalist, and it doesn't look like any of them will. Frustrating, as I was hoping to see them before the Oscars. But it's interesting they had a screen for last.
Where is your city?
They're not given. But her email does say it was sent by Yahoo Mail Search Organised Conquer. And then there's PPS. Dave Bautista was excellent at this, and he looks great with hair.
Oh yeah, he's got he looks a bit like a Kurt Russell, like with his hair.
Really slick back.
There is an idea there, 100%, about like, as you said, like women being propped up in their youth and being let down and abandoned, like everything that she knows, her history, like of her dancing career, being tossed aside for something else. Yeah. There's definitely something in that. I think the relationship between women, but I just felt it was underserved in this film slightly.
I think underserved, underexplored, but I almost wish that was in there. I really didn't come away with that sense of. I believe you when you say you saw it there, but I really didn't see it there. I think the substance, even Baby Girl, which I wasn't a huge fan of, is kind, and Bridget Jones, all three of those films, very different, are all completely tackling middle-aged women in a new phase of their life, I think, in a much more interesting way.
And in another world, in another film, this film has the script is a very light touch, right? If I'm putting it nicely, and in some worlds that allows performances to really breathe. But I actually thought it was like it had been cobbled together ever so slightly from something that didn't really have that much of an idea. Make it 90 minutes.
That was The Last Showgirl. Continue to send your thoughts in on that to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com.
George, should we go through some of the emails that we get sent into the show every single week? As always, guys, if you want to send in your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, your reviews, you can do by sending them into hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com, or if you support us on the VIP tier on Patreon, you can have priority access to have your email read out on the show. Amy starts us off with worst portrayal of Brit contender. Just picking up on a conversation we had last week about some of the worst portrayals of Britain, England, English accents,
which
British
always
accents,
seems to happen.
Which always happens. Amy writes in and says, "Hi James and George, love the pod, but how could you not mention Independence Day in your list of mortifying movie Brits, particularly this gem of a scene?" I can't remember this scene, but I think I believe you. Can only assume you wiped it from your memory due to PTSD, and it's the Independence Day British pilot scene.
I don't remember this at all.
It's very sort of, we're British and there can't be a possibility. We're going to in the Golden Straits.
I haven't seen this film in a long time, but Hotel Rwanda, I'm pretty sure there's a bit in that where Joaquin Phoenix is with a British news crew, and I don't know if this is a portrayal, but the Brits seem to be as really sort of like not cowardly, but they want to leave basically. And Joaquin Phoenix is like, "Hey, we can't leave. Like all this stuff's happening," and So like, hey, we've got to go. We have to pull out. The BBC doesn't want us to be here. And Joaquin Phoenix has this line which is like, come on, man, it's not Wimbledon. And it's like, oh, shut up. No one says that.
This just made me think of in Westworld season 1.
Oh,
there is the British. And I think this actor is British, which is strange, but it really burned itself in my memory.
My God.
He's like, I don't remember that show well, but he's like a producer or some sort of like rap manager, and he says, "For fuck's sake, guys, what are we doing here, please?" And it's like, why are you involving so much of your mouth to speak?
Great pull, because I had forgotten Westworld, and I had in particular buried that. But that is one of the reasons I stopped watching it, because it was so bad.
That was like being telegraphed as like the biggest show of the time that it was
they
out.
really tried to make
seasons 1 and 2. I think 2 never really took off, but season 1 was big, and in season 2 it just kind of fizzled. How did they do a third season?
Yeah, I think they did 4.
They did 4. Wow.
Honestly, I thought that show was really. That for me was when TV like peaked, and it was like it's so big, got such a big cast, and but it really
From Jonathan Nolan
didn't give us anything, and the dialogue was really weak, and
great cast.
It did that.
Hopkins
it did that thing which has a big tick in my mind. A big thing that bothers me. It did that thing where everyone just swore all the time, just like drop like in a way that no one actually does. And it was almost like placeholder, and I was like, could you just hold on the F-bombs a second?
It's a bit weird.
Could you just talk normally? Yeah. Everyone's like, hey, can't believe you're fucking this and fucking that. Like, oh, Jesus. The more you say it, the less value, the less impact it has.
Yeah.
It's like
save your
match.
PG-13 one fuck for like for a really big scene. Yeah.
This next email is from Hannah, who writes in and says, "Hi, pals. Deciding to sit on the fence and not name you in a particular order today. Hannah here, long-time listener and primary school teacher from Liverpool. Nice. I've emailed once before about the adaptations of children's books. Anyway, I was listening to your episode today where you mentioned Nepo babies, and it got me thinking about children in films in general, particularly children who are in violent films with severe nudity. Do you think these children get to watch these films back while being underage? You'd think after acting in something you'd be desperate to see the finished product, but what happens if that finished product is Baby Girl or something like Evil Dead Rise, which has the potential to give you nightmares if you're 10? I'm not sure if you know the answer, but I'm curious to see if you do. Also, just wanted to check in, say I'm loving the podcast, and hope you both well. Love seeing your work go from strength to strength. Hannah, thank you, Hannah.
I'd always thought this so I think one of the first, was it 18 rated film, The Omen? When I saw that, I was like, how is that kid going to see his film? Because he was really young.
But the thing is, they probably wouldn't invite him to the premiere, or like he would be there. His parents would be.
Yeah, of course.
He's like, we're not actually letting him watch the film. And when they shoot it, because it's in the world of, you build the world of the film differently around him. So when Stanley Kubrick made The Shining, he said to the kid who was playing Danny Torrance, like, this is a kid's film. This is a fun thing. So everything was really fun. So in his world, he was shooting fun. He doesn't see the blood coming out of the elevator. He doesn't see any of that stuff. And I do remember when James Cameron made Aliens, there's the scene where the girl who plays Newt, she has to go down the what's it called, ventilation shaft, and like it's an accident, it's not going to happen, she gets knocked down and she goes and she just kept going down it like a slide, and she kept laughing and having fun. And he was like, look, just give me one good take and I'll let you play on it all afternoon. So she did. She gave him one good take, and then for the rest of the afternoon he let her just slide down.
We laugh because like when Christopher Columbus was doing like the first 2 Harry Potter films, he was always working with kids, and like, from their perspective, they're making this wonderful world of wizarding Harry Potter. But imagine if it was like the human centipede in a magical world, and the kids just had no idea. They thought it was a lovely story. Protecting them. That's funny. This next one is from Jenny, who writes in saying, "Am I missing something? Hi guys, I hope you're well. As always, I'm thoroughly enjoying your shows, and I'm trying to keep as up to date as possible. I've not seen many of the big BAFTA Award nominated / winning movies you've been talking about, aside from Conclave and Wicked. Have enjoyed hearing your takes nonetheless. My question / concern / query / complaint this week is a bit of a throwback. It's everything. After many years of hearing rave reviews, this week I took the opportunity to watch The Godfather for the first time whilst it was free on Prime.
I've heard of it.
I have in the past been keen to watch movies that are deemed as classics, and so this ticked the list of another big name I needed on my life watch list. But I can say with absolute certainty that I did not see what all the hype was about. I found it thoroughly boring with little to no character development or substance, a very difficult to follow plot as a result of not really caring about the characters with their nondescript personalities and perhaps there not being much plot, and I felt that a lot of the acting was gimmicky, though I appreciate that perhaps it feels that way now due to many of the scenes being parodied and format copied since. There was also a huge amount of poor filming throughout, bad lighting, dodgy stunts, and scenes that were reminiscent of being one of those live audience TV studio shows where the sets almost fall over around the actors. Well, fun fact, The Godfather was like shot massively underexposed for a lot of it. What am I missing? Clearly, I'm in the minority here. As people whose opinion I value, please tell me what I didn't see. I really struggled to get through it and almost decided not to continue at all after an hour and 15. It is absolutely too long. I've had a hit and miss experience with watching classics. I have had a really hard time with Dr. Zhivago, again, very long and dull, and thoroughly disliked Casablanca, though I absolutely love some things like Some Like It Hot, Singing in the Rain, North by Northwest, and It's a Wonderful Life. My final question for you is, are there any critically acclaimed classics that, against popular opinion, either of you do not like or cannot understand the hype around? I'd love to hear your thoughts. All the best, Jenny, long-time listener and fan. Jenny, thank you for your email.
Okay. Jenny, let's just unpack that a little bit. First of all,
on The Godfather,
I would just say you didn't like it. That's fine. That's okay. The point is not that it's a film for everyone. I think people like it because for those people that it works for, they really like it. I think I agree. Sometimes when you're trying to fit in your film blind spots and you go and see a film that's really famous, you feel this pressure. When it doesn't click with you, you feel this annoyance. It's okay if that film didn't work for you. It's fine. I will say, just though, I will take you up on things that. It's one thing to not like it. I disagree. I think there is quite a lot of plot. It's based off a book, and I remember feeling The Godfather has a lot of stages and it gets quite plotty, particularly towards the end with who betrayed who and how we're going to resolve things. I also think we must be kind to the fact that films are older and older. So this film was made in 1972, and when you say about it like seeming like a creaky set and a live television audience, it is 50 plus years old now, and that's just how films were made at the time. And I think we mustn't be too harsh 50 years on to judge it for its production value when that was just the standard of things, the way things were. In
fairness to you, I would say that when I watched 1 and 2 recently, I watched 1 like 3 years ago, and like
Did
2.
you? I thought you just watched 2 recently.
2 I just watched. 1 I watched a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
And I would say that I acknowledge that I really, really liked them, but it was almost like I was so far removed from what that film was doing from when it came out and what it represented to so many people that it didn't have this like astounding impact on me. I didn't really think about it long after it happened. Even with part 2, I was like, this is good. I'm enjoying it. It's not like my film. It's not going to define my taste as a filmmaker. And I was like, I leave it over there. It doesn't occupy my mind. I think it's very good. I'm glad I've seen them. I'm like, it's fine.
I think it's one of those films that I think I probably only clicked with it maybe on the 3rd watch, but I think it's one of those things you need to kind of watch almost casually in a way. I think I put it on instead of trying to like go into it thinking, whoa, I've got to watch this monumental film that's regarded as one of the best films of all time. I just kind of put it on and allowed myself to be pulled in, not by this grandeur of this great film, but it's more like, oh, it's a kind of a crime thriller that's going to pull me in, and there's a bit of family stuff there. I kind of get what's going.
A lot of people feel that way about 2001.
Yeah, I mean, I understand more with that.
We had some emails about that a while ago of people watching that for the first time and being like, huh?
I do. I think
boring.
The Godfather has aged less poorly than 2001 has. I think 2001 is like a testament from a moment in time, which is great. And many of it's still, brilliant, but it's like it is also quite long and dry and a bit boring at times.
And then any films that are really sort of highly regarded that you sort of think against and go, do you know what? Everyone loves this film. I don't.
Fight Club. I've never got on with it.
Yeah, you said don't like Fight Club.
I will try again.
I could say
in
Green
a few years'
Book
time
because it won the Oscar, so that technically puts it in that category. Like people loved it, and I just didn't see it.
I will try again with Fight Club in a few years' time, but
yeah,
for now, no. Anyway, this next email is from Jackson with an X, which I kind of like. Jackson, hey, who writes in about divisive watches. Hey George, hello James. I figured I would try and change it up. A bit of swimming upstream here. I recently watched The Monkey, which we reviewed last week, and I came out of it very indifferent. I understood the campiness and the goofiness of the kills in the first couple, made me giggle, but they just repeated the same tropes over and over again, and it got dry quite fast. Also, I agree that the last 30 minutes, it just completely falls off, evidence that it was based on a short story. I was talking with my friends that I saw it with, and they felt the complete opposite. They loved it and went on and on about it. I was so confused. With this being said, is there a movie that you both have seen but have completely different opinions of? One loves it and the other hates it or finds it funny and the other one was bored. I live in Utah and went to Sundance hoping to run into y'all. Didn't see you, but I did run into a few stars, which was fun. Love the podcast. Keep up the good work.
So we've had a handful of films that we've just not seen eye to eye on. So Hitman from last year, we both just like didn't. And amazingly, the audience was like 50-50 split. There was no middle of people. Oh, it was okay. It was like, I absolutely loved it. Boring, didn't get it. And the split was reflected in the show. What other films did we not?
It's not a rare. It's not a common occurrence.
Say it's like once a year.
Maybe
we're both just like yes and no. God, what was it?
There's been films where you perhaps one of us has liked, the other one's been like
yeah.
But it's rare that it's polar opposite.
Were you like with the Wild Robot?
No, I liked Wild Robot.
Yeah, you like Robot. I mean,
good movie.
On the tip of my tongue, there's like a small handful, but Hitman was the main one.
I mean, things like Bones and All, you got quite
Bones and All I liked. Yeah, I did like.
But now I've heard enough. I remember being really bored in that film.
Yeah.
But hearing you and like Fred Asquith talk about it in a much in a really respectful way, I might return to that film.
Yeah.
I think I was in the wrong frame of mind.
I think I said this in my review. I was like, I was loving The Dark World. This was just shot very beautiful. It's like, I could have stayed here for a while. Thought that you can check out our review from a while ago, and also our 50th anniversary Godfather review. If you want to check out on our thoughts about that's when we did that.
Did we do that?
Yeah, ages ago. Do you remember?
That's why we did it.
Yeah, that's sort of, it's like early days.
Oh yeah.
That's when I would have last done The Godfather.
Oh yeah.
So there was that, and then on Bones and All, you can go and check out our review. I think I was like the actiony bit towards the end, spoiler free, didn't really need to happen.
I see. Yeah, okay. The conclusion. Yeah.
I was like, oh, it was interesting without that needing to happen. His character was more interesting before he did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked it. Again, it's kind of been a while. Nobody really talks about it outside of the people you've just mentioned who've also talked about it. Like, it's from Luca Guadagnino, who's releasing like a film every 3 months by the sounds of it.
Thing is, it's like, I guess by the fact that we do this together and we do this show, like we're
often
there's a Venn
sounding off each
diagram.
other. Yeah.
There's a Venn diagram of overlap here. I mean, but sometimes I don't know. I today could have said The Last Showgirl, I found it really poor. And you could have gone, I loved it. But I think that's rare because I would just say to you, what film did you see?
Yeah.
It's like we see films together in the same space. If we had a really different opinion, I'd be like, what were you watching at?
It would have been fun if I'd loved Emilia Perez.
Yeah.
Because you started to doubt yourself after a while because you'd seen it so long ago, almost in a vacuum. And then all of these award things coming out, and you're like, shit, am I really wrong here? And then I very quickly confirmed that you were right as well.
Thank you, Jackson, for your email. And thank you all for your emails this week. As ever.
I think we definitely
there's
have
more
appreciations for different things in films. There's some things that will be like, or a thing that one of us has just like more of a interest in inherently.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well that's like George's thing.
It's good that we don't completely agree on everything. It's good that certain films push different buttons in us.
Yes.
One of us will go, I love that. And he brought this, and that's good.
But generally, we're quite fairly aligned on what we're looking for.
Also, I think
when it comes to like the big franchises as well.
It's quite rare that we see a film that we're prepared to like. Today with The Last Showgirl is a little bit like an anomaly. I usually try and find something in a film that I like, but like it's rare that we actually sit down and go, no, this doesn't work.
You know what's the huge difference between me now I'm 30 versus film watching me when I would have been 20 is that if I met someone who like didn't like a film I loved or hadn't grown up, or hadn't seen a film I'd love, like say if someone said they hadn't seen Star Wars, I used to be like, what? You haven't? That's crazy. Like how are you even? And now I'm just like, I really don't.
Yeah.
People are from a different generation. They like different things. And if someone's like, I really didn't like that, but I did, I'm not like challenged by their opinion. I'm like, oh yeah, fair. I'm often like, yeah, I see how you could like not like that.
Yeah. It's growth, James. Well
it's growth. It's maturing. Growth. Yeah.
There are probably I think there's a small collection of films that I think.
Oh sure, there's like those. Oh, you need.
It's not films that people haven't seen. It's more that I think there's a small group of like deal breaker films. If people are like School of Rock is shit, I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Not because School of Rock is a cinematic masterpiece, but it's just a barometer of a personality.
I agree, but I think as I've gotten older, and I'll mix with people who might be like 23, and they say they haven't seen insert amazing film. I'm not like, what? You haven't? I'm like, you just haven't got.
Like
to
my
it,
colleague who couldn't picture Tom Cruise when I said Tom Cruise to her. She was 22 at the time, and I was like, Tom Cruise. I'm going to the Top Gun Maverick premiere, and she was like, Tom Cruise.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but
that's crazy.
Yeah, we have to.
That's like on the spectrum of like that's batshit crazy.
Yeah, and I was like Brad Pitt. And she was like, oh yeah, that name rings a bell. And I was like, what? Anyway, she wasn't. But also, one thing I've learned is just that a lot of people just don't watch movies.
They don't watch films, and that's okay. Like they don't have to watch films to be appreciated.
This podcast keeps us in a bubble, but we forget that sometimes, and that's why I remember if like. It's like if I see your sisters or whatever, and like you've had that, like, I'm like, or if I meet someone at a party or a family member, I'm like, oh, but this person actually has, this person watches 3 films a year. So I can't come in and say, well, I saw The Substance and I saw I'm Still Here.
Maybe have never heard of There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
And that for like us is like, oh my God, that's like one of the best films.
It's like I told you before when I worked at cinema for a bit, and I thought it'd be really cool because everyone had to have their favorite film written on their badge. So I thought I'm going to write Before Sunset on it. It'd be really cool. And obviously no one got it. And obviously this one customer was like, why is your name George Before Sunset? And I was like, no, it's a film. She was like, what film? But it's the second one. Who's in it? Ethan Hawke. Don't know who that is. And I was
anyway,
like,
you can get a large for 20p more.
Yeah. Oh, the upselling was criminal, really. It was really criminal. Well, if you paid this much more, you get this much more. Anyway, let's end this episode of Pulp Kitchen, as we always do, James.
With a game.
James, as ever, Pulp Kitchen ends
with a game.
And this week, guys, we have a return of the sound game. It's my turn to play some sounds to James. And if you aren't familiar with this game, if you are new to the show, I'm going to play a snippet, a little clip of a film, and James has to guess what that film is. Very simple. Play along at home. James, are you ready for your first sound?
Born ready.
Guess the movie from the sound.
Who wants to send a message to Germany?
I have a message for Germany. That you are all going to die.
Unmistakable from Inglourious Bastards. And the remind me her name.
Melanie Laurent.
Wonderful voice, wonderfully whispery French voice. Fantastic film.
Absolutely. From the conclusion of and I remembered that. So from the conclusion of Inglourious Bastards.
Set the screen on fire.
And I remembered it because I think you and I were at a screening recently, and it took ages to come on. And I was like, what was if it just comes on and it's, who has a message for Germany? I have a message for Germany.
I really remember spoilers for mild spoilers for Inglourious Bastards. Like when they do kill Hitler in that way, I remember really thinking like, good God, this film is out there, man. This Tarantino guy, he's not holding back.
Okay, James, that was sound number 1. Ready for sound number 2?
Yes.
Guess the movie from the sound.
I will find him. I will find him, Laura. I will find him!
So weirdly, because iconic sound, we said sorry because he said, "I will find him, Lara." I was like, "Is that the Lara? Is that the Tomb Raider film from 2014?"
That would have been a good deep pull, yeah.
Yeah, no, that is from the elongated, over-the-top opening of Man of Steel.
That's
Michael
correct.
Shannon just. What we now know is he's loving being in that film.
Yes.
A lot of actors like him years later would have been like, God, I really wouldn't have respected it. But he loved playing.
Yeah, he loved
General
it.
Zod.
I enjoyed the opening of Man of Steel. Convoluted as it was, but I was like, wow,
it was
stakes are
you know
high.
What? To give it credit, it was like, wow, look at this sci-fi world with a really distinct, what do you want to call it? Like a sort of visual aesthetic.
Yeah,
it felt alien and otherworldly.
It felt like the third act of a science fiction film, and we were just walking in, and we were expecting it to begin in Kansas.
It was like
it
was another planet, another civilization. Yes. The sort of they implanted the DNA of that type of aesthetic of the Kodex. Yes, and I felt like Man of Steel holds up as being a tasteful DC superhero film, and that vision of Zack Snyder's original Man of Steel thing eventually became something I didn't find tasteful at all, like just grainy and not nice, and the way in which what they did with all of the monsters and Doomsday and the guy from Justice. I was like, it's gone too far on the other way. I don't like the way this looks anymore.
No,
it's all artistic. But I really double down. I think Man of Steel's a good film.
Yeah, I do. It gets a bit long. That final action sequence is about 45 minutes, but I stand by it. It's something that if I was ill, I would happily like whack on Man of Steel. And I rate the beginning of that. And Michael Shannon, as you say, fully committed.
Kevin Costner's also brilliant in that. And the scenes with him and the kid still really hold up well.
And Russell Crowe's in it.
Yeah,
Russell Crowe is Jor-El, isn't he?
And I always have longed for an actual sequel to Man of Steel that wasn't Batman v Superman. I feel like we were robbed of like something that felt true to that. And the way that we're getting the Batman Part 2 soon, and I feel like that will hopefully, without knowing anything, be true to that sequel. I want a natural successor to Man of Steel. We won't get it now.
No, but it's what could have been. After Batman v Superman, there was still news. They were like, oh, we're still going to make Man of Steel 2. And I was like, well, what the hell was Batman v Superman then?
Yeah. And then they've gone, oh, well, this is Zack Snyder's trilogy of films. It's Batman vs. Steel, Batman v Superman, and his version of Justice League. I'm like, if you say.
If you say so, no. Complete BS. That was your second sound. James, I will find him. Michael Shannon, I will find him, Laura.
Yeah.
And then he came back for The Flash. And he was like, I don't really know what's happening, but I'm going to do it. Yeah. James, are you ready for your third sound?
I'm ready.
Guess the movie from the sound.
Come on! The foot are like a spider spinning a web. Attack it! Attack it! Come on!
So my first thought was big. They left me a Schwartz. So if you had it heavy, is it Black Swan?
It is Black Swan. Yes, that's right. That is the scene in which Vincent Cassel's, ballet instructor, ballet dancer, is teaching Nina Sayers, played by Natalie Portman, to spin, and it's from a point of view shot when she's doing the pirouettes.
Yes,
so the camera spins and locks in, and Vincent Cassel spins and locks, and then she's doing it. She's trying to get faster, and as she does that, Mila Kunis walks through the door and causes a disruption. That's the sound of the door at the end, and she loses her balance and she trips on her.
I'm really sure I like Black Swan. I think it's now been such a long time. I want to rewatch it to confirm. I say I think it's great, but I'm almost like, is it? And I want to now am I sure? Clutch my pearls. I now want to rewatch it and go, yeah, I get that. Black Swan's great. It's really
when
good.
I watched it when I was like 16, 17, I re-rated it as well. I saw it a couple of times, and I thought, this is great. This is really good. But again, then I've left it. But at the time, if you were like, what are some of your favorite films? I'm like, well, recently I saw Black Swan, which I thought was brilliant. Darren Aronofsky. I remember it had a very cold digital look. Yeah. It was kind of like, it might be shot on film. I didn't know jack shit when I was 16, but and I loved Vincent Cassel in it.
I'll never forget. So that came out 2009, so it would have been year 9. That was like 14, 15, like either GCSE or pre-GCSE year. I don't know. It says January 2011. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah. There you go.
I remember, James, because I walked to the cinema and it was icy and cold, and I saw it with my friend Louis.
It was a frosty
and
film.
we watched it, and the projection ratio size was a little bit too big for the screening, and there weren't many people in it. And it was the first time I'd watched that wasn't scary, but like an atmospheric film. And I learned that my friend Louis absolutely jumps at anything. He's got springs in his arse. He just like anything that makes a move, he just leapt out of the scene. Yeah. Anyway,
I'll never forget.
There's my memory.
Thank you. No, it was perfect. I'll never forget my English teacher, my GCSE English teacher, who was really pretentious. He used to say, it was a good, great teacher actually. But he used to always say things like, "And the eyes are," and the whole class would go quiet, and he'd be like, "Ugh, the windows to the soul." Like anyway, he once came in. It must have been on a frosty January. Walked into the classroom. We were studying like Shakespeare, Othello at the time, and he just went, "Sorry guys, I saw Black Swan last night, and it was absolutely phenomenal." And spent the entire 35-minute lesson just talking about Black Swan. I hadn't seen it yet, and it was like we didn't do anything. He just talked about how much he loved Black Swan. I kind of loved it because I was like, "This is great. It's better than Shakespeare." But other more like nerdy types were like, "We need to do this chapter of Othello." I was like, "Shut up! This is great." But it was a real like ringing endorsement from someone who was like analyzing literature with me every week, and I was like, "Oh, I should go and check out Black Swan."
And that's what you've reminded me of. Actually, it was like that was at a point when I was like really, really getting into film, and I really enjoyed lots of films at that time. The Social Network as well, and I was really excited about that Oscar season. I remember sat down with my drama teacher, and he was telling our class, he was like, he was Welsh. He was like, "I saw Black Swan at the weekend." And we're like, "Oh yeah, did you? It was good, wasn't it?" He said, "Absolutely ridiculous. There's a bit where someone gets dragged across the floor in a tutu. It's rubbish." And I was like, that does happen, but it's also great.
Surreal,
yeah, it's great.
Did you put your hand up and say, "So that does happen"?
I went, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." Anyway,
great
James, you've done very well. I think you will get the next sound. You've done very well today. I'm pretty
easier sounds today.
Easier
Yeah.
sounds
I've
today.
had people come up to me at the quiz when you're not there and be like, "Why are George's games so hard?" And I'm like, he loves his games.
When you're making the sounds, it is hard to know whether it's going to be easy or not for the other person. So I'm going to lean towards easy today. Yeah. James, are you ready for your next sound?
Born ready.
Guess the movie from the sound.
Shut the door, Alec! There's a draft! Alec!
It's so familiar.
I thought you'd get this one.
Shut the door, Alec. There's a draft. Is that Pierce Brosnan's voice?
Yes.
And so it's a James Bond film.
Correct.
And it's... Is it World Is Not Enough?
No.
Is it GoldenEye?
Yes, it is
Yeah,
GoldenEye.
okay,
By process of elimination. Well,
Yeah,
you got
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
he's saying, shut the
Do you know
door.
what? GoldenEye I've really not seen that many times.
really?
Yeah, it's weirdly...
That's my OG Bond.
And it probably should be the one I've seen more. But it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I had, when you used to tape films, my dad used to tape lots of them. And I remember we just had The World Is Not Enough, and I saw that a lot. Tomorrow Never Dies. Die Another Day, also like a bad film that I love.
Really? I've only seen it
so
once,
I see,
yeah.
Die Another Day I used to watch it at sleepovers all the time.
Oh,
I've seen it
right,
like
okay.
maybe 15 times. So weirdly, GoldenEye is a film I know maybe seen twice in my life.
Oh, I love it. I think it's...
I agree. It's probably great. It just doesn't happen to me that much.
I also think it's got that thing of not... It's before Pierce Brosnan's Bond went too high-techy, like he did
Yes.
with Die Another Day,
Yeah.
but it's also got the old world charms about the fall of communism, post-communist Russia.
Yes. It's not in my head, but-
Great Nintendo 64 game. Would you just play on it?
yeah.
Like, I love it. And then so that is the opening scene. Great opening scene. And
Yeah.
Sean Bean is Alec Trevelyan, and he says, "Shut the door, Alec. There's a draft." And he doesn't respond. He says, "Alec," and he comes out behind the barrels with the thing with a. It's a beautiful set piece with silence and tension and squeaky wheels, and Alec Trevelyan has been captured by the Russians.
A word I always...
For England, James.
A word I use to get into my Pierce Brosnan is "Tomorrow Never Dies."
Tomorrow
We always
Never
have
Dies.
"Tomorrow Never Dies."
Good movie, that
And
as
speaking
well.
of great James Bond PS2 games, the game Everything or Nothing,
Nothing.
which also has Willem Dafoe in it as the villain, voiced, and it's got... I think Judi Dench plays M, and I think Willem Dafoe plays the villain. But I don't think Pierce Brosnan is the voice of James Bond.
Right.
I might be wrong, but I remember us playing it in the noughties, being like, "That's not Pierce."
No.
But I'd maybe stand corrected. And I remember it was so cinematic for PS2
Yeah.
at the time. And I was like, oh, this must be being made into the movie. And there was this myth being spread around playgrounds, like, oh yeah, they're going to do Everything or Nothing next. They never did.
No.
They never adapted a PlayStation 2 game.
They had good two-player mode on that game. That's why I remember playing that with my friend.
Yeah.
There was a couple. There was almost a yearly Bond game for a
Oh,
while on
James
PS2.
Bond games are massive. You had like
Nightfire.
Nightfire, Agent Under Fire.
That's the two I played as well. Yeah.
Nightfire was really good. That was more of like that was a first-person one where you were more like infiltrating places, and then Everything or Nothing was really like graphically impressive, and you could rappel down from the
Yeah.
side of buildings and shoot. And the car stuff was always great.
But here's my tip. This is what I did when I was younger. You don't need to. I mean, I did have a PlayStation, which was great, but make friends with someone who's got a PlayStation, who's got all the games.
Oh, yeah,
you
of
just
course.
had it all.
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
buddy up
yeah.
with them. So they would come around. Do you remember that when someone would come over where they bring the games
Oh, it's
and the memory
brilliant.
card?
Brilliant. I loved
Ah,
it. Fantastic.
We're
And also
not old.
shout out to the Lord of the Rings Return of the King game.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
on
that
PC and
was
PS2.
great.
Fantastic. It had 13 levels. And every time you unlocked a level, you unlocked a dev diary. And it would be like Dominic Monaghan
Yeah.
and Billy Boyd talking about how they play games.
I'm here
And
at was it
Ian
EA
McKellen's like,
Studios?
of course, I'm here to adding my voice to the game. And it's brilliant.
Does
And
it
you
concern
play
you that my primary consumption of Lord of the Rings media is that game?
that game. And that game came out before the film came out. And technically, if you didn't know, like, could have technically spoiled a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff. So I remember I was playing that game before I'd seen the third Lord of the Rings film. And the levels, obviously, it's like a licensed, they're just making bits from around the actual film on, like, the film itself.
yeah.
And I remember, like, oh, God, this is so weird. I'm, like, seeing
Yeah.
the game, but not really. But great, you could level up all of your players
Yeah.
and you bought all the upgrades.
I liked playing as Faramir.
Which you only
Faramir.
unlocked when you finished the game. And it usually had like the Hobbit storyline, the three Aragorn, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. Then you had Gandalf's ones. And then when you've beat it, you could play any character in any of those levels. It's great. And
It was
it's
also
an
great
amazing
for-
two-player because
You could also just. It's one of those games where you could enjoy, but you could just smash buttons.
Yes,
and just
it was
smash
easy.
buttons
You
away.
could just mash a button, or you could learn the combos.
Yeah.
I used to play that two-player with my cousin.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just great time.
And on Double Take this week, we talked about the Revenge of the Sith game.
Yes, with the fighting mode thing,
And we've
yeah.
spoken before about Enter the Matrix and Matrix: The Path of Neo.
Not as good as those
No.
games. I don't think they're as good.
Well,
but
wait, what's not as good?
I would say if you replayed Enter the Matrix now,
Yeah.
that wouldn't age as well.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I
it is.
played that a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Mainly because I got stuck on a level and I just had
Which
to
level
keep
did you
going
get stuck
around.
on? I got stuck on the
retrieving
sewers.
Axel when you were playing as Niobe. So you could play as Ghost or Niobe.
yeah.
And no, when
Do
you
you
were playing as
remember
Ghost.
the cutscenes were live action cutscenes that were
Yeah.
shot with actors?
Yeah. I stand by that was a good game. And actually Path of Neo was pretty good because you've got to play the whole trilogy.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. I think I only played Path of Neo once.
That was episode 170. Thank you very much for joining us, guys, this week. Email in your thoughts on the films we've been talking about today, and also check out our Patreon exclusive show, Double Take, which we talked about at the top of the show, where we've talked about Dumbledore and other stuff.
I'm still thinking about the PlayStation 2.
But also check out for our feed for specials and bonus clips we put out. Sometimes we come up with them on the spot. Sometimes we release them ahead of time. So just check the feed. And also keep up with our social media pages for film bites and interviews and events and junkets and all that.
Tell your friends about the show. Spread the word if you enjoy what we do. And everyone says, "Oh, what podcast are you listening to?" Just fucking grab them and say, "Listen, buddy, it's Pulp Kitchen."
I want you.
What's that? Is it a food? No, just download it.
To quote Pulp Fiction, if you were to go to Indochina, I want you to be waiting in a bowl of rice, ready to Pulp Kitchen.
Yeah.
To Marcellus Wallace. I had to really paraphrase that line because I realised as I was saying it, it's full of expletives and things that should not be said on a podcast.
We post new episodes of the show every single Wednesday, with usually another episode at some point in between that moment. Thank you to our producers, Finn and Dave. We couldn't do this without you. Very much appreciate your support.
And a big thank you to our VIPs who we want to give a monthly shout out to. So that is Kieran Cleves, James Adeniyi, Owen Morgan, Shane, Stephen Mould, Harry Watley, and Eden Phillips. Thank you so much, guys, for your support too as VIPs. Have a great week, guys. Bye-bye.